Ukraine has become a global leader in drone warfare, constantly developing new and inventive ways to use these unmanned systems against Russian forces. From deep strikes into Russian territory to successful attacks on strategic naval targets like the Black Sea Fleet, Ukraine's drone program has garnered international attention. Yet, while drone warfare dominates the headlines, it's only part of the story. On the ground, the nature of the conflict looks quite different. One of the most unexpected developments in this modern war is Ukraine's return to century-old tactics, namely trench warfare. In a war increasingly defined by cutting-edge technology, Ukraine is achieving devastating results by combining drones and cyber warfare with the brutal simplicity of World War I-style trenches. Despite being lauded for its innovation, Ukraine has embraced this hybrid strategy out of necessity. While drones allow for deep strikes and surveillance, they can't hold territory or fend off ground assaults alone. Russia, with its manpower advantage, is pursuing a war of attrition, sending wave after wave of soldiers in hopes of overwhelming Ukraine through sheer volume. This has forced Ukraine to dig in, literally, constructing thousands of fortified trench systems across the battlefield. These trenches serve as defensive strongholds, allowing Ukrainian troops to resist Russian advances while minimizing their own casualties. Western media has focused heavily on Ukraine's technological breakthroughs. According to Chatham House, Ukraine has shown remarkable skill in using low-cost, low-tech solutions, like commercial drones modified for military use, to counter Russia's superior numbers and resources. President Volodymyr Zelensky has recognized the importance of this strategy, announcing that Ukraine plans to produce 4.5 million drones in 2025. In addition to boosting domestic production, Ukraine is entering international partnerships, including a recent co-production deal with a major U.S. defense firm and another with Denmark that will allow drones to be built on Danish soil. But again, drones are just part of Ukraine's evolving war strategy. Ukraine is using a mix of modern tech and old-world defenses to hold the line. According to British military expert Hamish de Breton-Gordon, Ukraine's trench warfare tactics are inflicting casualties on par with some of the bloodiest battles of World War I, like Passchendaele. In an interview with Times Radio, de Breton-Gordon explained that although we often think of modern warfare as high-tech and remote-controlled, on the front lines it often comes down to brutal, close-range combat, much like it did over a century ago. Russia's own strategy has evolved in response. Putin is increasingly sending smaller, more frequent assault units instead of large battalions. However, even this adjustment hasn't proven effective against Ukraine's new trench system. Ukraine has also modified its trench-building strategy, moving away from long, continuous lines to smaller, segmented trench networks that are harder to detect and target with drones. These new positions often span just 220 feet, making them more flexible and defensible. Ukraine's Defense Minister Rustem Umerov has emphasized that these compact trenches are key to resisting Russian advances and FPV drone attacks. Despite the effectiveness of Ukraine's defensive lines, Russia has resorted to illegal tactics to try to overcome them. According to Dutch and German military intelligence, Russia is now using chemical weapons, including a World War I-era poison gas called chloropicrin, dropped via drones onto Ukrainian trenches. This gas forces soldiers out of their fortifications, making them vulnerable to follow-up artillery strikes. This strategy violates multiple international agreements, including the Chemical Weapons Convention and the Geneva Protocol, both of which Russia has signed. Yet, as history has shown, Putin's regime has little regard for international law when it stands in the way of military goals. Evidence of Russia's chemical attacks has been mounting. Reports submitted to the UN's Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons have now been backed by credible European sources. Dutch Defense Minister Ruben Brekelmans highlighted the severity of the issue, warning that Russia's normalization of chemical warfare poses a broader threat to Europe and the world. De Breton-Gordon echoed this concern, describing how the combination of gas attacks, followed by heavy artillery, represents a lethal and morally reprehensible tactic. Nevertheless, Russia's efforts haven't been able to break through Ukraine's defenses. Casualty numbers remain staggering. In just the first week of July 2025, Russia reportedly lost over 4,400 soldiers. Stretching this rate over the course of a year would result in over 400,000 casualties, more than the UK suffered during the entirety of World War II. Russia has already surpassed the grim milestone of 1 million casualties since the start of the war. Yet, Putin shows no signs of shifting strategy. Instead, he is turning to allies like North Korea, which is reportedly preparing to send up to 30,000 troops to aid Russia's operations. Whether these troops will be used for defense or thrown into the meat grinder remains to be seen. Ukraine's response is to double down on its unique blend of trench and drone warfare. In the past year alone, the country has invested over $1.17 billion into building roughly 3,000 new defensive trench positions. These fortifications are located in areas either under active attack or anticipated to be targeted soon. This massive trench-building initiative represents a serious commitment to long-term defense against an enemy that has more men but fewer scruples. Western military thinkers are starting to take notice. Many in NATO, especially those in Eastern Europe, are realizing that modern warfare cannot rely solely on cyber capabilities or high-tech weaponry. NATO's traditional doctrine of maneuver warfare, based on mobility and surprise, has its place, but as Ukraine's example shows, it won't be enough against an enemy willing to absorb hundreds of thousands of casualties. Countries like Estonia, France, the UK, Spain, and Slovakia are now training their forces in trench warfare, preparing for the possibility of a ground war against Russia. Ultimately, Ukraine has proven that what was once considered outdated can still be devastatingly effective. By blending the old with the new, trenches and drones, grit and innovation, Ukraine is rewriting the rules of modern warfare. Its strategies are not just helping it survive against a much larger foe. They're forcing the world's most powerful militaries to reconsider what future wars might look like.